Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alicia Elizabeth, and we have been unpacking The Gifts of Imperfection by Dr. Brene Brown. You don't have to purchase the book, but I do encourage you to grab a pen and paper as we're going to unpack several things, and I think that they're worth taking notes. If you are new to this channel, so happy you're here. I would encourage you to subscribe after and only after you have enjoyed the entire video and you truly like what you heard. If you are a returning viewer, hey boo, hey. For both of you, grab a snack, get comfortable. I think we're going to be here for a while. In the last video, we talked about cultivating gratitude. And the second part of this chapter talks about joy. Okay, and so the actual guidepost, which is basically the topic of the chapter, is cultivating gratitude and joy, letting go of scarcity and the fear of the dark. Okay, and so what I love about this section with joy is that she talks about not necessarily how to have joy in your life, but the things that get in the way of joy, gratitude, and happiness. So we're going to jump right in and we're going to start with scarcity. What is scarcity? Okay. By definition, it is the state of being scarce or in short supply, shortage or lack. Okay. And if you're following along, I am going to be on page 81. She opens with joy and gratitude can be very vulnerable and intense experiences. We are an anxious people, and many of us have very little tolerance for vulnerability. Our anxiety and fear can manifest. So having, experiencing fear and anxiety, it can show itself by way of scarcity. She said, we think to ourselves the following things. The first one is, I'm not going to allow myself to feel this joy because I know it won't last. How many of us have done this? I'm going to be using myself, of course, as an example. I'm not going to allow myself to feel this joy because I know it won't last. We're going to keep it 100 on this channel, right? Because that's my, thing. I think I see this the most in this season in my life, or because I think there are going to be different opportunities of joy as I progress in different arenas, right? So like professionally, financially, things like that. But in this level of my life, let's say that, definitely in romantic relationships, and maybe even some platonic. But I want to focus on the romantic one because I want to level set with you how we can come into contact with something that's a good thing. And we say, I'm not going to allow myself to feel this joy because I know it won't last. We end it before it starts. We end it before it's supposed to end. We end it before if it even does end, right? Then she says, number 2 is that we say things like, acknowledging how grateful I am is an invitation for disaster. So this is essentially saying, let me just not even acknowledge that this is a moment to experience joy, because by professing, this is such a joyful thing, or I'm feeling joy, I am inviting disaster in. If you're that person, we'll come back to it. The third one is, I'd rather not be joyful than to have to wait for the other shoe to drop. So this is actually showing some form of a lack of balance. This person, or we'll just, make it a we thing. We rather not be joyful. We'd rather just not experience joy than to have it and have to hold on to joy, waiting, anticipating for the shoe to drop. This is the things we say to ourselves, right? So then she goes into talking about fear, and it's all going to come together. And her example for my parents that are watching is that she said she recalls sometimes sitting over her daughter when her daughter would be asleep and just being so in love and so grateful. And then in that same moment, fear would sweep in and she only could think about something bad happening to her daughter. And so let's look at the definition of fear first. Fear is an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous. It is likely to cause pain or is a threat. But then she goes on to say, so if you're not a parent, such as myself, let's think about, and this is again back to the relationship component, because her example made me feel like, okay, this is someone we have or something we have, right? But we're going to stick with the someone that we are just so in love with. Whatever type of love it is, just so like, oh my God, I just love this person. And I'm so grateful that this person is in my life. And in the same sweeping moment, fear takes over. So for people like myself, maybe you don't have kids, but maybe you're married, or maybe you are not married, but you have a partner. Finding yourself on that spectrum of being just so just like, oh my God, this is a good thing. And instead of just living there, we almost open the door for fear and doubt and a ton of other things to sweep in and completely cancel the joy that we're experiencing, right? So she says, most of us have experienced being on the edge of joy only to be overcome by vulnerability and thrown into fear. Until we can tolerate vulnerability and transform it into gratitude. So until we can tolerate vulnerability and transform it into gratitude, intense feelings of love will often bring up the fear of loss. And so hopefully that makes sense as to why I'm saying, like, from a parent's point of view, you know, instead of just capturing this intense feeling of love and being grateful, if we don't know how to like hone in on that and lock that in, we'll always think about losing that person, losing this experience. Same for spouses, same for couples. It's that intense feeling of love. I love this example because I think everyone finds themselves here sometime. I mean, I have had to chin check myself like, yo, what are you doing? Why are you allowing fear to take hold of you right now, instead of just like locking in a place of gratitude, right? So she says, so let's go back to Scarcity. She says that when we experience things like anxiousness, and being fearful, sometimes what we do is we tell ourselves things like, when we're not grateful and we're not feeling joy, it will make it hurt less. So I sat with this for a minute and I'm like, are you serious? And again, gonna be honest with you, in the dating space, I remember, no, wait a minute. I remember being asked, do you mean what you're saying, or is this a way out? And that's what this statement highlights to me. She says, when we think not being grateful and not feeling joy will make it hurt less. So sometimes instead of being grateful or experiencing joy, we do the opposite, right? So I'm trying to give y'all this example and not put anybody on blast. To avoid pain or loss, it's easier to just not get in a relationship, if that makes sense. I don't know if I can make it any simpler than that. She says, there is one guarantee, right? Because she says, we think if we can beat vulnerability to the punch by imagining loss, that we'll suffer less, and we're wrong by that. She says, however, there is one guarantee. If we're not practicing gratitude and allowing ourselves to know joy, if we are not practicing gratitude and allowing ourselves to know joy, we are missing out on the two things that will actually sustain us during the inevitable hard times. I think we just got to chew on that. When we don't practice it, we're missing out on it. And it is those two things, joy and gratitude, that will sustain us when hard times come. And you know what? I'm not a guru on breakups, but I'm just going to say, because we talk about the relationship realm, I do think that when we are present in our relationships and we are grateful for the experiences and we are just over like joyous, right, about it, even after a breakup, there comes a time when you can kind of like tap into a place of gratitude because you had the experience. I hope this is making sense. It's okay if it doesn't. It may take a minute for you to unpack because I'm unpacking it with you. But when she says when we don't experience joy and gratitude, we don't even have those tools to carry us when loss does come. You know, for instance, my grandmother passed this summer that just passed. And there are times when I think of her and I chuckle, like a really hearty chuckle. And then I get really sad, but then I go right into a place of like, I'm so happy I have these moments kind of compartmentalized in my mind, and I can hear you and I can remember like vividly just the temperature or the mood and the time of day, because it sustains me during the grieving part of losing her, right? And so the same can be said, because I don't want to just make it about relationships where I'm talking about romantic relationships. I want us to understand that this applies in all relationships, and this applies in all places that we need to practice gratitude and joy. But the example that she gave about the intense feeling of love is how these examples of relationships are relevant. Same goes for friendships. You know, sometimes we lose our friendships, but that doesn't diminish the experiences that we've had within them and areas that we can be grateful for in that, right? Hoping that makes sense. So then she says, what I'm describing above is scarcity of safety and uncertainty. But there are other kinds of scarcity. So I want to read something to you. Okay, ready? Lock in, listen in, because it's a little lengthy, but I want us to hear it. She says, this is a quote from Lynn Twist. She's written a book called The Soul of Money. And in this book, Lynn addresses the myth of scarcity. She writes, for me and for many of us, our first waking thought of the day is, I didn't get enough sleep. The next one is, I don't have enough time. Whether true or not, the thought of not enough occurs to us automatically before we even think to question or examine it. We spend most of our hours and days of our lives hearing, explaining, complaining, or worrying about what we don't have enough of. We don't have enough exercise. We don't have enough work. We don't have enough profits. We don't have enough power. We don't have enough wilderness. We don't have enough weekend. Of course, we don't have enough money, ever. We're not thin enough, we're not smart enough, we're not pretty enough or fit enough, educated or successful enough, rich enough, ever. Before we even sit up in bed, before our feet touch the floor, we are already inadequate. And by the time we go to bed at night, our minds race with a litany of what didn't get or didn't get done that day. We go to sleep burdened by these thoughts and wake up to the reverie of lack. What begins as a simple expression of the hurried life or even the challenged life grows into the great justification of an unfulfilled life. That's heavy. So then she goes on to say that addressing scarcity doesn't mean searching for abundance, but rather choosing a mindset of sufficiency. So how do I go from a mindset of scarcity? Right? Because in my head, based on the definition, the state of being scarce, in short supply or shortage, you instantly think we have to get to a place of having enough, right? And we think quantity of the tangible things. But I love this. She says addressing scarcity doesn't mean searching for abundance, but rather choosing a mindset of sufficiency. And so she says, we each have the choice in any setting to step back and let go of the mindset. Once we let go of scarcity, we discover the surprising truth of sufficiency. By sufficiency, I don't mean quantity. Sufficiency isn't 2 steps up from poverty or 1 step short of abundance. It isn't a measure of barely enough or more than enough. Sufficiency isn't an amount at all. It is an experience, a context we generate, a declaration, a knowing that there is enough and we are enough. Sufficiency resides inside of each of us and we call it forward. It is a consciousness, an attention, and intentional choosing of the way we think about our circumstances. And so before I close out, I just want to say that, remember, she's saying fear and the mindset of scarcity prevent us from having joy. Okay, I want to bring it together because I know it was a very wordy video today. When you experience fear taking place, or the space where joy and gratitude should be happening, you have to respond to it, right? And I'm going to tell you the little statement she makes that I love. And then also with scarcity, you also have to respond to it, right? Sometimes, and I've made a post on my Instagram saying that, you know, this quarantine has shown me that I have more than enough. We can't speak for everyone's situation. I'm not trying to diminish anyone who really may be in a place of not having. But I think, and this is just my opinion, even if all I had was beans compared to someone else who had maybe a freezer full of food, it's the mindset of sufficient. And I don't want us to focus on tangible things, but I'm using a tangible example. It's really just saying, like, I have enough. It's within me. Right? And so when I think of it on that layer, I'm thinking, and even if I don't have it in the tangible, what it takes to get lives within me. So I still have more than enough. Y'all better catch that. Even if I don't have it in the tangible realm, that's not what she's teaching. That's not what she's saying. If this book is saying, sufficiency resides inside of each of us and we call it forward. It is a consciousness and attention and intentional choosing of the way we think about our circumstances. So for me, one thing I say, and I don't mind saying this out loud because I want this to encourage educators. I remember telling my brother, educators are the richest people in the world. No, our career at the school does not pay us a lot, right? But you will never hear me complain about that because I recognize that educators literally plant seeds to help pave the way for every field we have. So if there is a field that's making a ton of money, an educator helped you get there in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Now, I don't know about your school teachers, but understand where I'm coming from. Learning to read, certain skill sets that you learn from someone teaching you, the art of teaching, is a plentiful, fruitful field. I have tapped into a mindset and I've decided that what's in me is enough. And so I'm calling it forth. I hope that frees someone. I hope that helps someone, that you alone are sufficient. We're not talking about tangible things. But if there's something lacking in your tangible, you have the keys to get it already within you. So lastly, she says, when I'm flooded with fear and scarcity, I try to call forward joy and sufficiency by acknowledging the fear, then transforming it into gratitude. So she calls forward joy and sufficiency by first acknowledging the fear, then transforming it into gratitude. She says, I say this out loud. I'm feeling vulnerable. That's okay. I'm so grateful for, and then you fill in the blank. And so, again, using my example, just where I'm at, right? Romantic relationships can feel a little scary when you're trying to find a husband, or you're trying to be chosen, or you're trying to find a wife. And so when you meet people and it's going well, and maybe in the past it hasn't gone well, it's really easy to let fear sweep in and dominate, right? And so I'm feeling vulnerable. That's okay. Calling out the feeling, affirming the feeling, but then responding to the feeling by saying, I'm so grateful for love. I'm so grateful for love. I'm so grateful for friendship. I'm so grateful for employment. I'm so grateful for whatever it is, cultivating that gratitude. Okay? So I hope that was helpful. If you haven't already, subscribe, share this video, comment below. Let me know how this helped. If it was confusing, let's talk about it. Remember, this is about dialogue. We are all in this. Everyone can find themselves in this. Don't you think that you're the only person. All right? I'll see you all Thursday. Bye.